Welcome to the Change Champions podcast. I'm Riley. This is Ped. And together we've spent over 30 years and $100,000 building our coaching and consulting businesses. Hopefully, this show helps you to do the same thing, but a little bit faster for a little bit less. So today we're explaining why trying to do everything, serving everyone, and thinking abundantly might actually be what is keeping you stuck.
Yeah, Riley, I have lived this for years. I thought being broad and saying yes to every project would bring me more opportunities. But honestly, I just ended up being exhausted and overextended and also like worried about where my next client would come from, all to boot, like the worst of all world. So today we're going to break down the emotional, practical, and mindset traps behind this abundance thinking of trying to do everything, and how narrowing your focus can actually open up more doors and more growth. So we'll share some personal stories, we'll share some client wins and concrete takeaways that you can apply right away. So shall we jump in, Riley?
Let's jump in.
Let's do it.
So the problem behind abundance mindset is really that it's actually typically masking or hiding what we would call a scarcity mindset. And they're supposed to be opposite, but I think a lot of times that's not so much the case. And so really what it boils down to here is really like a fear of commitment. And so a lot of coaches, consultants, they avoid or shy away from choosing a niche because they're scared. They might think that they are limiting their options, but what it comes down to is oftentimes I've personally experienced this as well, because it taps into ego and identity and like a lot of deep stuff that we won't go super deep into today, but it's that question of, well, what if I commit and still fail? Like, what does that say about me? That hit me deep when I first had that realization about myself.
Yeah, for me, it was actually a little bit different. I probably just had more of an aversion to the idea of niching, and my counterintuitive thinking around this, or the thinking I had about this that was completely counterintuitive to what I know now, is that in saying yes to every single project, it allowed me to have this broad appeal. It allowed me to share my expertise in all the different domains, be a problem solver in all these novel ways. And there's a part of me that really enjoyed that. I enjoy being a problem solver. But the problem was that every time I took on a new novel project, I had to learn some new stuff, which
The bandwidth.
has the bandwidth. It has its limits. And when there's constantly lots of different projects in lots of different niches, and I worked in with banks to tech to charities to government departments, and so all that context switching, even though I'm fundamentally doing the same work, I was doing training and development and consulting, just having to learn their context, speak their language, understand the nuances, that task switching ultimately was just, I just burnt out, and it wasn't sustainable. And so this idea that I had that this broad appeal meant success just meant burnout.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it can present different ways, right? Like on a really deep level, we talk about like ego, identity, commitment, fear. On the other side, actually, I guess it's fear, but it shows up in a different. It almost makes me think of FOMO. It's like, well, but I love doing all the things.
Yeah,
You're
right.
out, right? And like the common, most people have experienced this. The common metaphor that comes to mind is like scrolling through Netflix, and you just like sometimes you'll spend more time scrolling through things than actually just picking something and watching it. Which I swear they do that on purpose sometimes. But putting that aside,
Well, either just on that, sometimes you scroll and scroll and scroll, and then you don't watch anything either, in the same way that you just don't
hey,
pick it.
burn through because you only have so much time, right, for Netflix and chill time. But then in business, comparison we're making is you only have so much bandwidth, and so by spreading in a way, you're spreading yourself too thin. Is kind of what it comes down to. And then we see and hear and feel these complaints of just exhaustion and burnout, and it's like, well, it starts to make sense when you look at it this way, right? And so I'm going to go back to you for, I think we've talked about the problem enough. Let's get into some of like
Yeah, yeah.
the beliefs and yeah, move
Yeah.
forward.
Oh, well, maybe I already started to allude to this idea that being able to offer all of these different things means that more clients, that I could serve more clients, but we've only got a certain amount of time, genuine, like literally 24 hours in a day, and realistically, only a small percentage of that gets used for work if you want to have life, like friends, family, and all those things.
Yeah.
And so we can only really serve a certain number of people at any one time anyway. So offering more things doesn't necessarily give you more clients. It might give your clients way more options. But the other piece of this is that it confuses people more than anything else. So I know I've talked about the impact on me, that burnout. The impact on your clients or your prospective clients is they just don't know who you are, what you're, or who you serve exactly, what you can help them do. And in fact, because I did so many different projects, I just got begin to get known for things that I didn't even want to be known for. And in particular, I remember one time saying yes to a £30,000 project to do monitoring and evaluation for an awesome youth development charity, helping them figure out their theory of change models and all those things. And I got through partway through that and I thought, I don't want to do this. And I ended up subcontracting a lot of that work to somebody I trust. And it gave me the space to do other things. But it was just doing all these different things confuses people, I think is the main point I'm trying to make here.
Well, it increases complexity too. And now I'm leaning into my experience doing operations consulting. Uh, Part of the reason I had a job was because of the complexity. But unless you have time and budget to spend on fractional COO, which is essentially what I was doing,
All right.
then you got to simplify things. And it's kind of like having, like when you talk about options, I compare that to having like outfits in the closet. You might have 3 shirts and 2 pairs of pants and hopefully plenty of underwear and socks. But in terms of like how you present, you have a few different combinations. But then if you have 5 shirts or 10 shirts or 20 shirts, like your closet just starts getting really stuffed, crammed, like crowded, overloaded. And for you to like, it's not actually adding more value and it's taking more time away from you to stick to that analogy, is actually pick out the right outfit. How do you know which thing to wear for what? And it starts to it starts to weigh you down in a way.
Right. And the the piece about this that I hear quite a lot with especially some of our fresher clients that come to us is, well, I do all these different things. Like, how do I present myself online? Because if I start talking about this, it's going to alienate these people. And if I start to talk about that, it's going to alienate the other people. And so a lot of the a lot of the activities that you do with marketing, essentially telling people what you do, gets more confusing. So it doesn't matter how much more you post about your work, or no matter how much more services you add, it's not going to help you get more clients. You're just overwhelming yourself, overwhelming your clients.
Yeah, I think especially in the AI world that we're living in, part of what can help you stand out and position yourself or present yourself, right? If you're talking about this outfits metaphor,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah, yeah.
putting the right offer or outfits out there. You can you it's really like it's the detail, right? Because the AI can generate something that looks
Right.
pretty good, but
Yeah.
it's more about the depth rather than the breadth. And so again, this idea of spreading yourself too thin or cramming too many things into a cluttered closet, the idea is to limit the focus so that you can create that separation. And it's kind of paradoxical in a way, but it's
Yeah.
by going deeper and narrowing, you allow yourself to you open up a whole new world, which like we've seen this so many times. I mean, both ourselves, but also our clients, where by focusing on less, you all of a sudden create even more opportunities.
You know, this is something we weren't planning on talking about, but it actually just made me think about this talk I'm preparing tomorrow. I, yeah, I know that the two of us have talked through what I'm going to include in this and what I how I'm going to present certain things. And as I was preparing this earlier today, I realized that so many of the anecdotes or the mistakes and things that I'm going to share, it's stuff that I have expressed countless times, and I feel very comfortable with what I'm saying. So I'm able to speak with much more ease and more authority over that topic than if it was something completely fresh. And it's a subtle thing, but also a powerful reminder for me, at least when I was doing this, and I kind of thought, wow, it's so cool that I get to practice this and continue to practice getting better at expressing these key points. And I just wouldn't be able to do that if it wasn't for having had to focus and do the work that we've been doing.
Yeah, it takes time. It takes practice and repetitions. I mean, even hopefully as people, people have been following us from the beginning. You're a real one, but it's as we adjust and change like the format of this podcast, even you can hear if you listen closely some of the differences of like the first time we did it, and you might be a little rough around the edges, and the next time it's a little bit more. It's kind of like like tumbling rocks. Like the more it tumbles, the more you smooth out iron out the kinks, smooth out the edges. And just to go back to, I love my metaphors. Um,
You're known for them, Riley.
yes. So, I mean, to shift this conversation into potential solutions for people that are listening. So obviously we're talking about focus, but just to really hammer it home, I really want to point out like one analogy we really like is the like buffet versus chef special. If you think about any buffet for that matter. I mean, anyone that I've ever known. Is it known for something like other than having a lot of food? By definition, right? I mean, do you actually think like, oh, I'm really craving that one thing from that buffet? Like, it's so rare that a buffet stands out above the rest of the options. But by creating the chef special or like a signature dish, that commitment and that narrowing, it creates clarity instead of confusion, like you were talking about before. And it's not necessarily about cutting off opportunities because that incredible Michelin star restaurant, they don't have less opportunities. That's insane. They offer less things. And it's really just about sharpening that focus so that you can't, and that I could go on and on about all the benefits that come out of this, but a few of the like the key ones that I'll highlight are just you have less waste. So we talk about
Yeah.
that with, right? You're not spreading yourself too thin, you're not burning out. And by potentially putting yourself, I'm going to use air quotes here for anyone who's just listening and not watching it, but potentially putting yourself, quote unquote, in a box, you actually, by labeling yourself, you make it easier to position yourself and easier for your potential client to know what is in your special, like what is actually on offer and why is it worth a premium price instead of a fixed, I don't know, 10.99 for all you can eat.
Well, I had my experience of developing a chef special, if you will, to use your metaphor, uh, in the pandemic, and this was the moment I had my aha moment around niching because I niched by mistake or by accident, I should say. There was an opportunity to go and help a bunch of local charities, small charities in the UK, go through digital transformation, basically take their services online fast, and I got into this groove of doing that work a lot, and it was essentially a very similar problem each time, which meant a very similar solution each time. That meant that me and my partners at the time, we created the playbooks first for ourselves and for our clients, and it meant that there was, like you said, less waste. We could do more, or we could serve more people in less time because we didn't have to reinvent the wheel each time. And a lot of the stuff that I shared earlier in this episode, where I was talking about burnout, etc. Yeah, I definitely worked hard, but I didn't have to do as much task switching. Plus, it meant that I could create these repeatable systems, which meant bringing on more people, being able to automate certain things. And I know this is when we knew each other here. I brought you in on one of those projects, and you played a significant part in that charity developing a much more streamlined uh, booking system, right? And it just meant that people knew what was in my kind of chef special, and I kept getting fired for that. 2 years of being pretty much fully booked. I know that looking back now, I clearly don't do that now. I realize that that wasn't the thing I wanted to double down on, and that's a different story altogether. But it is yeah, it's a powerful lesson that I don't think I was ready for, but when I learned it, I've become a big evangelist for other people, recognizing that if you want more business, you've got to narrow down with who you serve.
Yeah, I mean, like even word of mouth increases,
Yeah.
right? Referrals increase. So to kind of marry some of the analogies we used with, and I'll share a client example too to give people just another example to apply this lesson. So I am no Marie Kondo. I am not facing, but one trick that I do know for cleaning out your closet is everything you have on a hanger, make sure all the hangers are in the same way at the, I don't know, now or the beginning of the season or the year or whatever. And then uh, flip all of them the opposite direct, like flip it all backwards, basically. So then as you take your clothes out and you wear them, when you put them back how you normally would. And so you can see what you've actually used or what you haven't. And at the end of, depends on your time frame, but I don't know, the season or the year, you can see what you haven't actually used and you can get rid of it. So you declutter your closet, and it's based on real actual data in a way, which you use, right? So this is comparable to like market research or just listening to what the market is telling you. And so an example of this in real life is our client, let's just call Suzanne. She's very not a Suzanne, but I'm going to go Suzanne. Suzanne. Um, and Sue for short, I'll just say. So
Totally not a Sue either, but yeah.
yeah, so Sue is focusing on, uh, I'll just say a big corporate kind of industry, and it made a lot of sense on paper, given her background, her experience, her skill sets, her prior experience in consulting and specifically facilitation, made a lot of sense. But then when she actually started talking to the market, so in this analogy, it's like, what clothes are you actually wearing? There wasn't a lot of bites. Wasn't a lot of interest. It was like, wow, this is tough sledding. This is a lot of, it's like an uphill battle. Like you're paddling upstream. And in that same time frame, she had multiple people from an adjacent, let's say a different niche, reaching out to her. She has more access to it. It's a clearer market. It's more identifiable, or I should say just accessible, more access to it, like I said before. And it ticks all the other boxes. And we're like, okay, this might not sound as good on paper. Maybe they can't pay as much as big corporate, but at the end of the day, does it really, like, doesn't this make a lot more sense? Does it really matter? And so that's where this narrowing the focus and just kind of listening and being willing to not romanticize an idea, I guess, and it doesn't matter if the idea is the who or the what or the how, whatever the idea is, we want to try to, at least, what we tell our clients all the time is, let's just try to focus on the path of least resistance. And that way we can actually paddle, with the current instead of against it.
Yeah. And look, if you want to become that go-to expert, build that stable income, and ultimately work in alignment and with who you want to be in the world and what impact you want to have, which is ultimately, given the dozens and dozens of people we've actively worked with, and multiply that with all the people in this coaching, consulting, training, and facilitation space that we know. One thing is true is that we want to help people grow, and we've got different versions of how we express that. But so long as we're in alignment with that, then this idea about needing to stay broad, you've just got to get rid of that idea if you still have that idea. If you want to be that person that helps others, then the paradoxical thing is by choosing to help less people, you end up working with more people and therefore having more of that impact that you want.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest lessons that our clients, but also just myself personally, have learned over the years in entrepreneurship is it's just hard to grasp how big markets actually are. And that goes back to that scarcity mindset that we talked about at the very beginning of this episode. It's it's not just like, oh, there's a dozen people I could reach out to. It's like, no, no, no. There's thousands and that's even I remember talking to one person in particular who was describing her super niche target audience. I mean, it was like very, very specific. And she's like, this is so small. She's like, it's only like a fraction of it was like 3% of the population, and I'm only looking in the UK, and it's only maybe on 10% of that percentage. And I'm like, all right, so like we're talking about like a 0.5% of the global population. Is that right? She's like, yeah. I'm like, that is a massive number. It's a huge amount of people. Like even as narrow as you think it is, it's like, my God, there's a lot of them out there. So some as we close here, I'm gonna for our viewers or listeners, I'm gonna rattle off some reflection questions that we have prepared to maybe help you kind of like translate this for yourself for your own business. So the first question, I've got three of them. So the first question is, what's one need or offer you keep circling but haven't committed to? So kind of like our client Suzanne we were talking about. What's something that's maybe been like in the back of your head, it's been nagging you, or people keep coming to you for, but you just haven't committed to, and actually like cut off all the other things. Just focus on that. Second question is, what story are you telling yourself about why you can't choose? And this is maybe related to some of that deeper stuff we were talking about at the beginning of the episode. Because a lot of times it's just that, I'm just going to call it baggage for to keep it short and brief because we all have it. And if you aren't paying attention to it and bang your head in the sand, then it's not very self-aware of you. And as a good coach, you want to practice what you preach. And the final question is, what would change if you gave yourself permission to test and focus for just 90 days? That's it, just 90 days. You have a whole life, a whole career ahead of you. What if you just took one quarter to focus? What could actually, like, what are the opportunities? What could happen?
And just on that, I had a mentor once who said, you do not have to marry your niche. You can date your niche for
Exactly.
90 days.
For 90 days. So, with that said, to recap here, we unpacked, why doing more isn't necessarily the answer, how an unchecked abundance mindset could actually be masking a scarcity mindset and really be holding you back, and why narrowing your focus creates the freedom and the stability that so many of us are actually craving. And we talked about depth versus breadth and decluttering the closet, to pull that analogy back up here. And then the other analogy we talked about is the chef special versus the buffet.
And look, we know that this work isn't easy. We've both been through it before, and we are here to help you. So make sure that you take these steps with confidence. And if this episode hits home for you, leave a comment, drop us a follow, or subscribe to our newsletter, where we occasionally share some free resources that can help you develop and sell your services faster. Also, if you haven't already subscribed to this podcast, make sure you do that, because we're here to help you turn your expertise into offers that people actually want to buy without burning yourself out or guessing what the market wants.
Till next time, thank you.
Bye bye.